All right, first up today, Milwaukee parents who are raising an intersex child. The couple made what many people might consider an unusual choice after their baby was born, and they hope that their story will help other parents who face the same questions.
For the purpose of understanding, intersex means that a baby is born with a combination of both male and female biological characteristics. Eric and Stephani Lohman had a baby they named Rosie almost 6 years ago. Immediately, they had to make medical decisions that would affect Rosie's life forever. They wrote this book, Raising Rosie. It's part memoir, part guidebook, and it details their decision not to have Rosie's gender surgically assigned at birth. It also discusses how they explain Rosie's condition to family, teachers, and caregivers.
Thanks for being here.
Great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's talk. Rosie's not your first child either, right? Is she your fourth?
She's our fourth child.
She's your fourth child, and she was born. She's 5 right now.
Almost 6.
Almost
Right?
6, yeah.
And for the purpose of explaining too, let us know if that is a good way to define intersex, but also you do refer to her as your daughter, right?
Right.
Okay. Was that a decision also?
Well, she is genetically a girl, so she has 2 X chromosomes, so we just, that was a choice, and we chose to raise her as a girl because we think that intersex doesn't necessarily mean gender neutral.
Yeah.
Right, and so Rosie affirms herself as a girl, right? She describes herself in those terms, and until that were to change, until she was to say to us that this isn't how she likes to be referred to, then at that point we would consider, calling her a boy or calling her something different, but for the time being, this is what she prefers, so that's sort of what we go with.
Well, Tiff and I were talking about that this morning too. We were saying at 5, even long before 5 probably,
Kids often know.
No, they identify with the gender. That's one of the first ways that we define ourselves. So they're definitely old enough to know how they see themselves.
Right. Yeah. And she feels like she's a girl.
Yeah.
Well, that's got to help that there was a medical help in there knowing which chromosome she had. How early did you know that, and how early in a pregnancy, or is it at birth, that you found out a child is intersex?
Well, we found out right away with Rosie. So Rosie has a condition called CAH, and when she was born, she had ambiguous genitalia. So it was obvious right from the beginning. And it wasn't until a little bit later when we had some genetic testing that we found out that she had 2 X chromosomes. But there's a lot known about CAH and ambiguous genitalia in girls. So we just assumed.
Gotcha.
In the beginning.
And so did you call her Rosie right away? Did you choose a feminine name from the start?
Yeah, we chose the name, when after the ultrasound and we knew it was going to be a girl. We had, with some of our older kids, we had fought and pushed to try to figure out what names we wanted to go with, but Rosie was really, I think, pretty easy for us. That was one we decided we really liked it a lot from the get-go and wanted to sort of shorten it up and call her Rosie. Her name is Rosalie. So we call her Rosie for short, yeah.
I love that name. And a lot of people would maybe think, well, you could pick what some people would consider a gender neutral name, but clearly her name is feminine too, or sounds feminine.
Right, and so this is exactly one of the ways how we describe this being sort of self-directed, right? Like if Rosie wants to have a male name or a gender neutral name or a different name, she can do that just like anybody else could do that, right? So a lot for us is about letting children decide. So you have to give a child a name, and so you let them decide if they don't like it and they want something else, right?
Yes.
This is what I think is fascinating. One of the things that you tell parents is you're not anti-surgery. This isn't something that you're against having the surgery. You're just pro-consent. You want her to be able to choose. Do you assume or think that at some point she will have surgery?
My suspicion is that no, Rosie would probably not want to have a surgery because we worked really hard to make her proud of her body and feel comfortable in her own skin. But that being said, if she did, we would be supportive of it. And we just think that there's an age, and it differs between people when they can make a choice and think about long-term consequences.
Yeah.
And she's not ready to make that choice yet. And I think that it's hard. We get asked that question a lot. So you think they have to be 18? No, I mean 7, 8, 9. Kids are coming to terms with their body, and then in adolescence, there's everybody can remember those times where you're really coming into development and thinking what you want for the future. And that's when we would talk to Rosie a little bit about it, and that's what we're hoping for all kids.
Yeah.
One of the things I appreciate about your story is you're very honest about the fact that time where you're faced with the question about surgery, that it was traumatic. And I would guess most parents choose to have, it's a cosmetic surgery, right? It's a cosmetic genital surgery. Most parents probably choose to have it at the time their child is born, thinking that's going to be less traumatic. And I wonder how much pressure you had, or maybe just how much pressure you felt in making a decision to go ahead with that.
We felt a tremendous amount of pressure. The medical team who we met with gave us very sort of conflicting and strange advice about not telling our other children about Rosie's condition and about keeping it sort of quiet and secretive. And so there was a lot of pressure to consent to this surgery. We started to explain that their medical research didn't support what they were suggesting. There was no medically necessary reason to have a surgery if her body functions normal. Then this is by definition cosmetic, and we shouldn't be doing cosmetic surgeries on children, especially one so embedded with ideas of gender and sexuality that are so problematic. So our goal was simply, there's no reason that we can't wait. And that is not just necessarily what the paradigm is. The paradigm is to do the surgery right away. Don't tell them what this is about, and out of this fear that somehow they're going to get bullied or they're going to have these traumatic lives, nothing of which is supported in any of the medical research on this. These surgeries are happening every single day. They happen at Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very common for us as a practice in our society to do these cosmetic genital surgeries for completely medically unnecessary reasons, and that's really what our advocacy is about, is stopping that.
Well, and you think about it, parents are faced with that every day. They have a boy, they have to decide whether to circumcise them or not. That's not a functional thing per se, it technically is cosmetic. So it's something that parents deal with every day, whether they think about it or not. They already have something ingrained in them that they believe. You really kind of have to balance this privacy of hers, because I'm sure people really always press you for more details, versus advocacy. How do you feel to walk that line in a way that respects her but also educates others?
So we have dealt with that, and it was a hard choice to make Rosie kind of like a public face of our fight. But we talked to a lot of adults who have intersex conditions and who feel fulfilled in their life, and what we came to was a decision about privacy versus secrecy. So you can have a private life, but there's a difference between never talking about something and keeping it a secret, because secrecy breeds shame. Yep. And one thing that we wanted was for all of our kids to feel loved unconditionally the way that they were, born. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, after talking to a lot of people, we don't want to keep Rosie a secret because we're proud of her like we are proud of any of our children. And she's awesome.
Yeah, she's adorable. And one of the things I noticed too in your background, because Eric, you're a PhD in media studies, you're a lecturer, researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I know you focus on gender, race, and class in the media. And Stephanie, you are a nurse, right? And you work in healthcare and science and infection prevention, and you have degrees in chemistry, biology, and nursing. And I just wonder, if your background and what you do is helpful in helping people understand this, and maybe even your own understanding of this condition and helping her understand herself.
Certainly when we were having conversations about this, as you mentioned, there's so few parents who push back or who don't consent to these surgeries. And for us, I don't want to use the word fortuitous, but it was, I suppose, maybe a lucky chance that it was us who had an intersex child, because we had access to a lot of this research. We were able to read and get medical journals and things like that lots of parents don't have access to, or don't necessarily have a community around to help them understand some of that material, which is, we felt an obligation, I think, to be advocates for this topic, because we had this sort of unique backgrounds, we had education, we had access, and we had this intersex child. And so the choice for us was, whether do we keep Rosie, sort of let her have this sort of private life, or do we we go out there and be advocates and be public and make sure that there are other people who know. And, we felt like we spared Rosie. We saved her from having these surgeries, and we felt an obligation to try to do our best to make sure that other kids also have that same chance.
People can come and meet you at your book signing. It's fantastic. Again, it's Raising Rosie. One thing for parents, you want them to know, use correct language for their body. Say uterus, not tummy, things like that when you're having a baby. Friday, July 27th, 7 p.m., Boswell Book Company on Downer. Lots more takeaways for parents on this topic so that you can meet them and have conversation as well. Here's a great website to learn more about intersex and all gender roles, interactadvocates.org to find more. Thanks for being here, both of you.
It was
for having
really
us.
nice to meet both of you. Thank you so
Appreciate
much
it.
for being here. We appreciate it.